Speaker, author, and coach Colin Ryan uses humor and storytelling to bring dry but important subjects to life. To date, he has spoken to over 500,000 students and adults. In addition to speaking, Colin trains professionals and entrepreneurs to grow their business and impact through public speaking. Colin and his wife Lindsay live in Burlington, Vermont, whose winter temperatures may explain why they're here in North Carolina right now. So today, Colin's going to share with us his talk, 3 ways storytelling can change your life. So please welcome Colin.
Thanks, Ken.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Okay, so I want to tell you about the year I resolved to lose my virginity. That was the opening line that I thought about for my first story at the Monty in January. I was like, that's a good line, right? That's a story. I'm not going to tell it here. I know this is an all ages talk, so that was my line. I go to this event. It's filled with people. I'm new to North Carolina. I kind of don't know what to expect. I don't know if some of my jokes about being raised fundamentalist Christian are going to go over. I don't really know what to expect. I get drawn as 5th. The 4th storyteller, her name's Catherine, she stands up and she says, I'm going to tell you all about the year I resolved to lose my virginity. And everyone went, ah, and I went, oh no. And it was a great story. She was raised Mormon, and she kind of found her way out of that and figured out who she was. And in many ways, it was so different and yet so similar to my story. And I went up there after her and I said, I'm going to tell you about the year I resolved to lose my virginity. And they got this special kind of a laugh, which is the laugh of this poor guy. Like, this is the same story. And then I made the comment, I was not aware it was such a common resolution. And then it got my favorite kind of laugh, which is the extended laugh of, we're all in this together. This is a vulnerable moment for this person as he shares. And it was a pleasure. And part of the reason that I can tell stories about things that might sound really personal is because ultimately what storytelling has taught me is that the personal is universal. I don't know how it works, but the more specific you are about what happens in your life, we are relating machines. Other people's brains just go, I get that. Right? I was reading Persepolis, which is about a young girl growing up in Iran under a fundamentalist father and all these, and living in war and all these things. And I was like, I'm relating. Why am I relating? On so many levels of privilege and difference, I shouldn't, but I do. So the thing I want to share with you today is this idea that each of us has unique stories to tell, but those stories are actually this connecting magic. And I can't speak about it intelligently. I can just acknowledge that it is true. I started storytelling about 10 years ago, and in that time, I have been able to share things I'd never said out loud with anybody, such as the story I referenced. I was a late bloomer, in case you're wondering why that story is funny. It took me a while to shed some of the baggage of my own religious upbringing and to become a person who trusted myself and could be open to relationships. And I've also told stories about the fact that when I was in church, I once starred in a series of movies produced by a megachurch for Vacation Bible School.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of you are recognizing me. Yeah. That's a great story, too. I've talked about growing up with asthma and the weird fear, sort of panoramic fear that created in my life and how that affected other things. I told a story once about being, bullying is a strong word, but I answered a questionnaire in 6th grade, and I thought the teacher was going to read it privately, and instead we shuffled them up and read the answers out loud, and it was just mortifying. I'll tell you one of the answers. I outed myself as currently a member of my local church's clown troupe, which is called Clowns for Christ. And that's still hard to say.
Did you do clown communions?
And that was a long time ago. We didn't do communion. Thank you for asking. I'm sure that was the Catholic clown thing, but we were no, we do communion in Protestant church. We mostly did nursing homes.
Okay.
I appreciate your question. There's a lot of balancing on imaginary tightropes and a lot of polite laughter, I'm sure. And, you know, that story, believe it or not, was played on National Public Radio, on the Mouth Radio Hour, and was featured in Reader's Digest. And I don't claim any credit for that. I just told it at the right day in front of the right producer who wanted to make sure that got out there. And I was saying to somebody, it's so weird that this story would connect to people. And she said the most obvious thing to me. She said, Colin, we were all 11. So while my specific details may not connect with other people, the feeling of being an outsider is something we can relate to. So today I want to talk about 3 ways that storytelling can change your life. And I could give a different talk entirely about how to tell stories, why I think you should attend live storytelling and maybe tell your own stories. But I want to talk more about the philosophy of storytelling and why it's affected my life, because I think this will be useful to anyone, because it's a surprise to me. I never thought storytelling would be a big part of my life. We'll go past, present, future. All right, those will be our 3 areas. I'll try to keep it really neat. So the thing about storytelling is that you understand intuitively that there is a character who goes through something in order to grow. It doesn't take you long to realize that you are that character. So if we're looking at our past, one of the things we can do is we can take control over past mistakes by reframing them as hard lessons that taught us something that maybe we wouldn't have learned any other way. Question for you, you don't have to answer, you can just nod. Have you ever learned something really valuable the hard way? Did you feel that? Did you feel what just happened in the room? So we all have. One of the things I do as a job is I talk to college students and staff about personal finance. And my favorite thing is the part of the presentation where I say, how did you learn something the hard way about money? And if you wait long enough, someone will tell you a story that they probably have never told anybody, because they believe that mistakes devalue us. But what they come to understand is that we all make these mistakes. The bar is so much lower than we think. And I have had people say some pretty meaningful things. Someone told me once her parents had co-signed on a credit card and she had overspent it and ended up having to pay her parents back. I think it affected her parents' credit. She's now like 30, 32, and she's telling this story. And she goes up to Alex and says, Colin, I've been ashamed of that moment for like 10 years. And what I often do, after someone shares, I say, can anyone else relate to that story? And like every hand goes up. And I just kind of imply like, so maybe we don't need to beat ourselves up about this, because maybe you learned something from that you wouldn't have learned another way. And so what honestly happened is she let go of shame. Now I was a facilitator in that, but ultimately what happened is she changed that story. So the question for you, I don't know what is happening. It's now over here. It was over there. It's exciting.
Just keeping you on your toes.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what's happening. What is something that you might want to let go of? What is a mistake? What is a decision you made that maybe the word regret comes up for you? You wish it had gone differently. What would it look like if you looked at that moment and said, who did I become because of that moment? What is the value that I now practice that came from that story? Has anybody learned a good lesson through a hard moment? Anybody want to share? Yes. You are Zoe, yes, the Manticore. Go ahead.
One time I went to, I forgot what it was, but I went somewhere. It was like a camping trip, like camp. Mr. Pom Pom.
That's a real person.
For camp, and then we had just put out a fire, and then when it was time to leave, we put out
Okay, so you tried to help put out the fire, and you picked up a piece of firewood and you burned yourself. What did you learn from that experience?
I learned that you shouldn't do something unless somebody tells you to do it, or when you don't have.
So I was expecting you to say, don't touch firewood. But what Zoe just said is, you shouldn't do something unless you've checked with other people that it's the right thing to do, which is like deep and profound. Can we give it up for Zoe? That was really special. Thank you for sharing that lesson. You did it better than I could have even trained somebody, by the way, Zoe, which is like, you made it universal. It's awesome. It's so easy to do that. I call it the "that's when I realized" sentence. And the beautiful thing about it is it makes you the least preachy person ever, if you're willing to speak from that place. All right, let's talk about the present. How can storytelling change your life in the present? I am of the belief, using this metaphor of storytelling, that there are, let's call it, at minimum, 2 storytellers in our head at any given moment. There is the inner critic, and there is the inner champion. You may be familiar with these voices. If you want to put them in mindsets, you have the growth mindset, which is the idea that I can change, I can evolve, I can make a bigger life, I can learn, and the fixed mindset, which is this is as good as it gets, hang on to what I have because I'll never get past this barrier. So those are the 2 voices that are in our head at any given moment. Abundance and scarcity. So one of the things I want to suggest to you is that we can practice identifying which voice is telling the story at any given moment. Maybe your body tells you. When you are in stress or in fear, does anybody notice that in their body? Yeah? Does anybody have like an area where they feel, neck? Yeah. That's why I give you massages. That's my wife, by the way. I should have said that before the massage thing. She's like, right now, let's go. Go ahead. Did you say something?
I was just chuckling over what.
Oh, I love that. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. Other areas of the body where people feel it? Chest. Yeah, Kevin. Yeah. And you are, I forgot your name already. Kate. Yes, me too. Right in here. Tight. So the idea would be, what is the thought that is accompanying or triggering that feeling? And this is where it gets into it's really fun, simple practice. Choose a different story, right? So one of the larger theories at work is that we grew up with a story that we tell ourselves every single day, and we feel like it's true because it feels true. And it feels true because it feels familiar, not necessarily because it can be verified. So our opportunity is to start telling a different story. They call this affirmations. Have you ever sat and said to yourself, I am talented, I am kind, I am patient, I am generous, I show up for people, I have so much love to give. I guarantee you, if you do that, maybe if you have, you know this, you feel it in your body. You could feel that tightness loosen. Now, I'm not going to say this is like guaranteed. It takes time, but that's what's worked for me, is to tell a different story. Another beautiful thing about our present is we can identify what types of stories are outside of us that are growth or fixed. I'm going to point to our media as an example of this fixed, this scarcity story. Media likes to tell what I call non-resolving narratives. What a good story does, the same with a good joke, is it creates tension and then it releases the tension. What a lot of media headlines do is they create tension and then they leave you there. Maybe you've noticed this. I read a headline once that was like, Supreme Court Justice predicted to vote against X, right? It's like, that didn't happen. That's not a story. It's a prediction of a thing, but it still has that fear response in that case, and so that's a non-resolving narrative.